begins day 894 of the Trump administration, and we now have shocking new images of the extent of the humanitarian crisis at the border, released today by the Department of Homeland Security's own internal watchdog. The government provided these images from facilities for migrants in Texas's Rio Grande Valley. This photograph from June 10th in McAllen, Texas. Look at this. It shows families packed behind this fence into an area labeled Pod 2. In Westlaco, detainees with children laying on the floor and on concrete benches on top of each other with what appears to be one water cooler, some wearing masks over their mouths. And in the Fort Brown station, one man is seen holding up a handwritten sign that says, "Help, 40-day here." They are all included in a new report from the Department of Homeland Security Office of the Inspector General, which surveyed those Rio Grande detention facilities last month. The report describes, quote, serious overcrowding and prolonged detention of unaccompanied alien children, families, and single adults that require immediate attention. Senior managers at several facilities raised security concerns. One called the situation a ticking time bomb. Children at 3 of the 5 Border Patrol facilities were visited and had no access to showers. 2 facilities had not provided children access to hot meals. Tonight, a new CNN poll shows nearly 3/4 of Americans say the situation at the southern border with Mexico is a crisis. A number of House Democrats toured migrant facilities in Texas yesterday and Florida today. Today, they and party leaders are speaking out about the conditions and about the White House's response.
We came today to say we will shut this down if we have to. And because this does not have to be this way.
All the people in the administration who have done this, who have permitted it, are guilty of child abuse, which is a crime. We ought to prosecute.
As soon as we went to the El Paso border station, we insisted on talking to these groups of women. Tears were rolling down their faces as they talked about their conditions. They said that they had no idea when they were going to leave. They had been there over 50 days. They said that they had been separated from their children.
Just ahead, we're going to have more on this with Democratic Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, seen here of Pennsylvania, who was at the centers in Texas and Florida and has seen the conditions up close. In the wake of all this, House Oversight Committee Chairman Elijah Cummings announced this afternoon that his committee wants to hold hearings with the administration's border chiefs next week and issued a statement saying, quote, the Trump administration's actions at the southern border are grotesque and dehumanizing. Also today, the president's effort to add a citizenship question to the upcoming census appears to have collapsed. The administration will now go ahead and begin printing the census forms without that question days after the Supreme Court blocked its addition. Just yesterday, Trump had said he was still looking at delaying the census. Trump's also facing an escalating fight to get copies of his tax returns. The House is now suing the Treasury Department and the IRS, demanding copies of the returns which the administration refuses to release, even amid the crisis at the border. The challenges to his policy goals and the outright battles with Congress, Trump remains defiant. This morning, he sent this out, quote, Robert Mueller is being asked to testify yet again. He said he could only stick to the report, and that is what he would and must do. This witch hunt must now end. No more do-overs. Earlier this evening, Trump's campaign also announced a rally in North Carolina on July 17th, the same day Mueller testifies to Congress. Trump also made sure to get this out, quote, the economy is the best it has ever been. And there was also this. Big 4th of July in D.C. Salute to America. The Pentagon and our great military leaders are thrilled to be doing this. Incredible flyovers and biggest ever fireworks. Tanks are being moved into position for Thursday's events. 2 defense officials familiar with the planning tell NBC News there will be a variety of military aircraft involved and that Air Force One may be included. The Washington Post reports the White House is giving tickets to the July 4th event to Republican donors and to political appointees. The Trump campaign also says it's providing tickets to its staff and their families and friends. Earlier today, NBC News' Peter Alexander asked the administration about the distribution of those tickets.
Why is the Republican National Committee giving out tickets to supporters of the president? Why are those going?
This is a public event. It's open to the public. The public is welcome to come and celebrate our great country, the greatest democracy, the Constitution, all the amendments, not just the First Amendment that seems to only interest you only, the Second Amendment, all the others, but really just the birth of this country, the greatest democracy that ever lived. I'm not going to allow you to politicize it.
Wow. Okay, here for our lead-off discussion on a Tuesday night, Kimberly Atkins, senior Washington correspondent for WBUR, Boston's NPR station, Philip Rucker, Pulitzer Prize-winning White House bureau chief for the Washington Post, and Jill Colvin, White House reporter for the Associated Press. Phil, let's start with you. The administration has been defending what is coming out about the conditions at these migrant centers. I want to listen to the Deputy Customs and Border Patrol Commissioner Robert Perez on Fox and Friends.
Everyone in our custody at all of our facilities have ready access to fresh water. They have access to consumables, and the standards that we apply to make sure that on a recurring and very timed basis, that not only they have access to the types of consumables and fresh water that they would need, but even in between, if they make those requests, that our agents and officers are at the ready to provide those types of requests to them.
All right, Phil, that stands in sharp contrast to what we've seen from a Department of Homeland Security Inspector General report, what we've seen from lawsuits that have been filed, what we've heard from reporters, our own reporters who've been outside these facilities, and what we are now hearing from members of Congress who have gotten as close access as they can get. What's the real situation here as far as we can tell?
Well, the situation is very dire indeed, and you're right that statement that you just played is not in keeping with what we're hearing in our reporting and what we're seeing with the images that are coming out from some of these facilities, thanks to some of the members of Congress who've been there. And it's a real crisis for the Trump administration. They have been struggling for the last several months to contain the situation at the border where there had been a surge in migrants. The numbers of border crossings have actually declined over the last few weeks, and the number of detainees has started to decline, although it remains at a very serious crisis level. But the administration has not provided the kind of transparency that certainly Democrats are demanding, and nor has there been much accountability. And part of what's going on here is a political story. The president is eager to have headlines about immigration. He sees this as a winning issue for him, politically speaking. And in fact, his campaign advisors told my colleagues at the Washington Post today that they want to be talking about this every day between now and the 2020 election. And so as it becomes such a core, sort of emotionally charged issue in the Democratic debate, you're seeing the president and his allies trying to make it politically advantageous to them as well.
Kimberly, that may be a road that is fraught with peril because, as we saw from the earlier poll released tonight by CNN, a majority of this country thinks that the humanitarian situation is the crisis. The president tries to portray the numbers of people coming over the border as the crisis that he wanted to declare a national emergency over. But the president is not getting pushback from GOP members of Congress.
Right. I mean, I guess crisis is in the eye of the beholder politically in this case. Republican strategists believe that immigration is the #1 winning issue for them in 2020. The president seems to think so as well, and he is eager to talk about this as much as he possibly can. And Republicans are, as you said, largely falling in line, even as more and more Democrats, almost entirely Democrats, members of Congress are going and viewing these facilities, going there firsthand. Keep in mind, this is several of the lawmakers described that some of these folks had been moved in the last 24 hours before they arrived. They surmise that this was an attempt to sort of sterilize as much as they could the conditions before lawmakers could come see them and talk about them. And they were still that bad, where people did not have access to facilities, to water. But as you said, immigration is a sparking point before an election, even when there are visuals of people actively suffering in U.S. custody. So,
Jill, the issue here is that between the competing narratives, the administration's narratives through the DHS and the various branches of the DHS that deal with immigration, and then the other narrative that is largely coming from Democratic members of Congress, but others, where's the public in this? We are starting to see movement in terms of people feeling it's an emergency and a crisis. But at this point, that backlash could find its way to the White House.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this has been something that has been going on for months and months now. I remember reading independent reports several months back talking about conditions like this, talking about the overcrowding at these Border Patrol facilities, these Border Patrol agents really just not knowing what to do, how to handle these families coming in, people coming in, needing medical care, children separated from their parents because their parents were taken to the hospital. I remember one scene of this Border Patrol officer kind of trying to process people coming in as a 2-year-old was sitting on a stool next to him, going through his iPad, trying to keep him entertained, and just nobody knowing how to deal with this situation because the government wasn't giving them the resources that they needed. But I think that when the ball really started to shift and the public really started to pay attention here and to express some outrage is when we started seeing these images, coming out. We've got members of Congress, especially members, the Democrats who are running for president right now, who are going to those facilities every day, taking tours, putting out pictures, describing the conditions that we're seeing. There was that very just heartbreaking, devastating photograph of that father and his daughter who died as they tried to make the journey across the Rio Grande, pointing to how dangerous that journey is, that these people, how desperate they are as they try to make their way to the U.S., only to face the kind of conditions that they're facing here. And as this becomes politicized, as the president's team continues to believe that this is a winning issue, and as the Democrats running believe that this is an issue that they can win on and that they can score points against the president on, I imagine that it's going to stay very much at the forefront.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.